Hello, welcome to 8.9 News. I'm Costain. Barclays is working in collaboration with the Environment Bank to support greater visibility and adoption of Biodiversity Net Gain to landowners and developers across the built environment sector. I spoke to Adam White, Head of Agriculture at Barclays Business Banking, and I asked him why the new partnership with the Environment Bank is important.
We saw an opportunity after talking to both our farmers and developers to support them in connecting for nature restorations projects. Environment Bank are experts in this field, and it's a field which does have its complexities. So that's one of the key offerings we feel this collaboration provides to farmers: access to experts who understand the BNG market and the nature restoration market.
How do you expect the relationship to work?
So the plan is that we will connect our farmers to Environment Bank, who will help in terms of setting up nature restoration plans and habitat management plans, working on how does that work on that specific farm, on that specific piece of land, and then ultimately through Environment Bank connecting them to developers who are desperate to buy those credits for areas that they're developing.
So how can farm businesses get really good value out of the BNG credit market?
We're seeing some farms and estates that are already getting good value, and that's down to having strong relationships with local developers and also local planning authorities, and they're working together really to navigate what's a very new area for everybody. That approach, though, is not for every farmer and landowner, because there are some complexities, there are some new relationships that need to be built. And working with Environment Bank, it allows farmers and landowners to benefit from those ready-made relationships and expertise to access that biodiversity net gain market.
Do the farms and estates that you're talking about tend to be quite large, or can smaller farms benefit as well?
Specifically, I think for Environment Bank, it is those smaller farmers who may have a small proportion of land that they want to, that's just very hard to produce food on and quite unproductive. So that's particularly where we see they're going to need support, because you're going to need support from ecologists, you're going to need support in terms of understanding all of the elements of biodiversity net gain, like Section 106, and working with local planning authorities. So that's where we see particularly the opportunities to work with Environment Bank.
Do you feel that there's any conflict between BNG delivery and food production?
Yes, so I think firstly, BNG I see as applying to land that is unproductive, so land that requires a huge amount of effort and a huge amount of inputs in order to produce food. However, we are seeing habitat management for biodiversity net gain being run alongside livestock grazing, hay cutting, and in some parts of the country we've seen the integration of fruit trees. So that's why I feel it's really important for farmers to have access to expertise on what a habitat management plan looks like for their own farm and what are the options they can build into that plan.
So livestock can be integrated within BNG units?
Absolutely, absolutely.
In a recent Barclays report, Creating New Nature Markets That Work for Farmers, you outline steps that government needs to take to accelerate biodiversity net gain delivery. This includes the promised land use framework. Why is a land use framework needed?
So we feel that the land use framework, which has been discussed for a number of years now, it will help provide a strategic direction on how a series of complex trade-offs can be made, such as food security, emissions reduction, nature, preservation and health, and how all of those can be managed. The outcome of that is that farmers and landowners are then reassured they're making decisions which sometimes are for 30-year periods that are aligned to that strategy and don't risk making the wrong decisions on how they utilise their land to generate diversified income streams. And I think that's a real barrier for farmers, is making long-term decisions that they haven't got certainty that they're actually supposed to be making those decisions, or they've got support to make those decisions.
And what's your vision for how that land use framework might be delivered in practice?
Well, I think if we look at the Climate Change Committee pathway, we've got a pretty good idea of what a national land use framework needs to look like. There needs to be local delegation on what that looks like at a local area. But I think having that national view of actually this is what we need to deliver in order to deliver on the Climate Change Committee agreements, and then how all of the other parts fit within that in a local area is really important, because local authorities will know what they do and don't have.
What other actions are needed from government to provide BNG policy clarity?
So one of the key areas we've highlighted in the report is support for that wider ecosystem. So one of the things that we've heard a lot about is support for local planning authorities to understand biodiversity net gain. Obviously, local planning authorities are very, very busy, and this is in addition to them. In our report, we shared that 85% of local authorities said they required additional professional advisors to support those new responsibilities. And that extends to areas such as legal advice for Section 106 agreements, where there is support, where the support across the country varies. But there are some pockets of real best practice. And it's really important that those are shared across the country and different planning authorities.
There does seem to be a lot of variability at local authority level, which of course is affecting BNG delivery on the ground.
That's where I think a collaboration with Environment Bank is really important, because it will help connect those different parts and understanding, and have an expert who can help guide some of those conversations and some of that learning.
Adam, we ran an interview earlier this week with the Soil Association Exchange, who said that banks need to radically rethink how they support farmers to shift to systems that prioritise climate and nature. Now, in particular, they called for actions around mechanisms such as payment holidays and discounted loans to give farmers more headspace to both plan and deliver transition. How is Barclays innovating in this space?
I've recently spoken to ffinlo, and I think I shared some news on our green loan. And last time we spoke, I shared that this is an area we're taking extremely seriously, and we're working very hard on a solution that provides bank finance incentives to farmers to transition, particularly for farmers that have already borrowed to invest on farm or are planning to, and rewards practice and outcomes as part of the transition. One of the things I think it's really important that we do is define finance, because that word is perhaps misunderstood in different areas. So, for example, if we look at bank lending versus income streams for farmers, that's in a lot of cases classified as finance, and the word gets blurred between the two. The reason I highlight this is that DEFRA data shows that 46% of farms in the UK borrow less than £50,000, and only 20% borrow more than £400,000. And not all of that is bank finance. Some of it will be trade credit, it could be personal loans from family members. So at Barclays, our focus is on providing a package of measures that support farmers in their transition. Biodiversity Net Gain can play a part in income replacement and generation, but it also extends across the food supply chain in ways such as contract security, income incentives, and especially the expertise and peer-to-peer learning in making the right transitions, and an awful lot of myth busting as well.
That was Adam White from Barclays Business Banking. More news as ever on our website 8.9.com. That's all for now. We're back soon. Thanks for watching.